Welcome to a new type of video today where I do a breakdown of the hints from our last Triforce Blitz seed. In this video, I will do my best to try to explain all the logic of the last seed to help everyone understand everything there is about Triforce Blitz. Let's get into it. The first thing to understand about Triforce Blitz is that every seed you will spawn as an adult at the Temple of Time. The pedestal will give you your adult dungeon medallion layout, as is pretty standard in the randomizer these days. Once you have read the pedestal, you can access this information from your menu by hitting the down on the D-pad. Outside of the Temple of Time, you will always find that the 4 gossip stones will tell you the following. 1. Your path count to power. 2. Your path count to wisdom. And 3. Your path count to courage. 4th, you'll also get your first path hint. From there, it's up to you where you go, just as it is with any seed. Zora's River is very powerful as part of your opening route, as it contains 3 hint stones, and hints are very powerful in these settings. Hints can come in one of several forms in Triforce Blitz, so let's break those down. You will come across 3 path count hints only at the Temple of Time, like I said before. From there, you will receive path hints, foolish hints, wanderer hints, unlock hints, 2 always hints, those being Ocarina of Time and Nocturne song checks. You'll also get a 20 Skulltula hint from the Skull House, and in some seeds you'll even get some sometimes hints. Path hints and foolish hints will always prioritize dungeons over overworld hints. This means that if you're getting overworld paths or foolishes, there aren't enough items in dungeons to hint for that type. Path hints are going to be unique items that are required to get to a piece of the Triforce. It's important to notice that I said unique, because that's where the existence of wanderer hints gets tricky. Wanderer hint is towards an item that is not unique to getting to the Triforce piece. For example, Child Spirit requires Requiem, which would have to be path, plus either a slingshot or a boomerang logically. Well, if there are 3 slingshots available Sphere 0, none of those are unique because no slingshot locks another slingshot. Even if 1 locked another slingshot, this still wouldn't be the case because 2 would be available. These would be wanderer and not part of the path count towards accessing Child Spirit. I'll come back to this with some examples from our last seed shortly. Unlock hints are direct hints that tell you that one item unlocks another item. For example, from our last seed, we got a hint in our seed that said Song of Storms unlocks a wanderer's strength. This tells us 2 things. 1, Song of Storms is potentially relevant to the seed, and 2, that strength is wanderer. These hints are very powerful as they give you direct item information to help you figure out your paths. Finally, you will get sometimes hints in the seeds only if there weren't enough items to be hinted as path or wanderer. You tend to only see these in low path count seeds. Let's finally get into our last Triforce Blitz seed for some examples. Last seed, we had the following breakdown of path counts. We had power was a 1 and was in the basement of Jabu Jabu's belly. Wisdom was a 4 and was located in the bombable room of Deku Tree. Courage was a 0 and was in the spirit in the sun switch on the floor room on the child side that has the Lizalfos in it. This feels like the perfect seed to break down, as Spirit is always interesting due to its potential to be a super low path count, like it was here with a 0 if there are a lot of wanderer items, or it can be an insanely high path count depending on where strengths and Requiem are located. Now, let's get to the paths for this seed. In total, you can find a max of 10 path hints in Triforce Blitz Season 2.5. For power, there was 1 path hint available, and that was Lost Woods was path to power. In the Lost Woods, we found a Kokiri sword and Ruto's letter. Now, Wisdom being a 4, we ended up with 3 path hints. Lost Woods, Death Mountain Trail, and SFM were all path to Wisdom. Lost Woods again gave us Kokiri sword and Ruto's letter. Death Mountain Trail gave us a bomb bag and a boomerang. And SFM gave us both Minuet and Zelda's Lullaby. To understand our paths, we also need to understand our wanderers, as those come into play here greatly. I didn't mention courage because courage is a 0 here, so there's no paths for that. This seed hinted us 6 locations as wanderer. Kakariko Village, where we got Requiem. Desert Colossus, which gave us Song of Storms. Death Mountain Trail. This was also hinted Path. Now we have to figure out which items are Path and which items are Wanderer from there. Well, we found a boomerang and a bomb bag there. Goron City, which had a slingshot that we never found in the spinning pot. Kokiri Forest, which had a strength in the Storms Grotto, which explains our Storms to Wanderer strength hint. And Lake Hylia, which had a strength on child fishing. The strength doesn't lock the other strength in any way, so strength is guaranteed Wander, even if we didn't have the hint. So now, let's break down the Triforce pieces. Starting with power, we know that this is in Jabu in the basement. For this piece, we need a few things. Entry into Zora's domain, which we either need Zelda's Lullaby plus bombs, or a scale. Entry into Jabu, which requires Ruto's letter, and technically a fish, but that's solved by Ruto's letter being emptied out of the bottle. And third, we need a projectile of some sort to hit the switch in the first room of Jabu. With this piece being a 1, we know that ZL can't be required as a path item. Both entries into domain must be available somewhere logically then. Looking at the spoiler log, we found that Child Dompe check has a scale in Sphere 0, and we know that we found ZL and Wanderer's bomb bag. So entry into Zora's domain is Wanderer at this point, and therefore we're still at a 0. From there, entry into Jabu, well, there's only one Ruto's letter, and therefore that has to be path. We're up to a 1. Projectiles are pretty easy to come across this seed. Slingshot is in the spinning pot of Goron City, and we know the boomerang is available as well. All this added together means that this Triforce piece ended up as a 1. Wisdom being our longest path count this seed, but pretty straightforward all things considered. Being in the bombable wall room in Deku Tree's basement means we mostly need 3 things. 1, a K-sword for entry, and a Deku shield, but you start with a Deku shield, and this won't ever be path. Bombs to open the bombable wall, and a boomerang to acquire the actual piece. Looking at our paths, we found the Kokiri sword in the Lost Woods, which checks out for the list. Death Mountain Trail gave us a boomerang off of the fairy fountain, so we needed bombs and ZL to get that. Bombs we already know are Wanderer, so where is ZL? Well, ZL is in SFM's adult check. This means that we either need Saria's song or Minuet to access SFM as an adult. Well, the Ocarina of Time check is holding Saria's song hostage. That means Minuet is the only way we can get Zelda's Lullaby, and ZL locks being able to get the Ocarina of Time song. Therefore, Minuet is a unique item on our path, as well as ZL. All this together gives us 4 unique items to get this piece. Now, for what I consider the most interesting piece in this seed, and it's the 0. Courage being a 0 means we get no direction at all for where this piece is going to be. 100% locked behind Wanderer items, so that's all we can really go off of. Thankfully, Requiem is a pretty big hint when it comes to Wanderer's item. So let's break down this piece as to what we need. 1, we need access to Desert Colossus as a child or an adult. 2, if we're going as a child, we need a projectile for access to potential keys in the beginning of Child Spirit. If we're going in as an adult, we need Strength 2, a projectile for the switch above the Beamos, and potentially Zelda's Lullaby for a small key to go deeper into Spirit. It just so happens all of these are available, so let's talk about that. Access to Desert Colossus is one of 2 ways. The first, which is Requiem, which we got free from Kakariko in the windmill. This is pretty easy. The second thing is Logical Wasteland Crossing, which would be Epona's or Longshot to get into Gerudo Fortress, then Longshot or Hookshot plus Hovers, and Magic and Lens of Truth to cross the wasteland in Logic. Epona's song was a nice cavern, so technically available based on the other items we have. Hookshots were in Bomb Chew Bowling, which is only locked by logical bombs, which we know is Wanderer at this point. From there, the second hookshot is in GTG. This is on the right side of the maze as the freestanding item. Both technically are available before Wasteland Crossing. Hovers are on the Bogoron and claim check is somewhere stupid in water, so let's not worry about those. Magic was hinted on 20 skulls and easily accessible. Lens of Truth is in Zora's Fountain under the icy waters, meaning we would need to get iron boots on our way to go get that song from Ice Cavern. Maybe water is possible here. And those iron boots are just in the remote grotto of Hyrule Field. So technically all of this together means it's logically available to cross the wasteland as well, which makes both accesses to Colossus wander. Whew, that's just part one. In this seed, I chose to go into Spirit as a child, as I knew we had everything for Spirit's early skulls as a child. We had a boomerang to put the bridge down and get a key, so it just made sense to me. Had it been much deeper, I probably would have come back as an adult to make navigation easier. So looking at child access, we had a boomerang, but slingshots were easily accessible too. So that keeps us at 0 to get our skull, to get our Triforce piece. Now that we have our pieces, let's talk about Wanderers. Let's go over the Wanderers that haven't been fully explained now. We talked through Requiem pretty heavily, so I will skip that one. Song of Storms from Desert Colossus is only kind of relevant because it leads to that strength in Kokiri Forest. Strengths not locking strengths are an important part here because that keeps them Wanderer. Strength 3 was, however, somewhere on Spirit Adult Climb, so Strength 3 is locked by Strength. As for bomb bags, Tektite Grotto had a bomb bag. We had the one above Dodongo's Cavern, and there was one in Spirit Trial. Hammer was available on the Death Mountain crater wall to make things even more confusing in terms of logic. Hammer is the important part here in my mind though, because strength gives us access to that hammer to blow up the rolling Goron in Goron City and get access to Death Mountain crater. This hammer gives us access to the iron boots in Hyrule Field and therefore gives us access to the Tektite Grotto bomb bag. This means that the Tektite Grotto bomb bag is not bomb bag locked and therefore bombs are Wanderer. Slingshots are a bit better in terms of logic, but not great. We have the Goron pot one. A sling locked sling is actually on Goma's heart piece, and then there's a slingshot in Spirit available as an adult. This means that the scary Spirit key logic determines if that last slingshot is slingshot locked or not. Well, because we have access to a boomerang, that actually doesn't matter, and therefore Slingshot is Wanderer for Child Spirit access due to the boomerang also being available. At this point, I think we've covered those pretty well. Otherwise, our foolish locations here were Zora's River, Temple of Time, Haunted Wasteland, and Forest Temple, which tells me that every dungeon besides Forest Temple has some sort of major item located within it. They just aren't path, and therefore I shouldn't go into other dungeons. We actually found 2 sometimes hints available to seed as well, being a blue rupee on target in the woods and Shadow Trial 2 chest being a heart piece. We actually never found those as far as I can remember, but it's always interesting to see those. Does your brain hurt yet? I know mine does. Triforce Blitz is really good at teaching us logic. It can also be a huge pain to try to understand sometimes though. The longer path counts usually are more straightforward in terms of making sense logically because those are just one item leads to another chains. If you have any questions on anything I have said, leave them down in the comments. I read every comment that comes in, so I will answer any questions to the best of my ability. Let me know also if you enjoyed this breakdown. That way I know if I should do more of them in the future or not. Signing off, this has been Flash with your Triforce Blitz seed breakdown. See you next time.